Welcome to another mix comparison on the WorkingAudioTools, the home of all things mixing, with myself, Paul Third. And today we have a guest. Hang on, I've just said myself, Paul Third. That's confusing. With myself, Ed Thorne, and my co-host, Paul Third. And today we also have a guest who is the writer and the producer and the vocalist, and I believe the mix engineer, multi-talented person, of the track that we have mixed, which is called Build Behind Our Eyes. And we're going to be getting feedback from the artist and producer on these mixes, and it should be an interesting episode. Can we introduce Sam Reck to the WorkingAudioTools podcast?
Hi, Ed. Paul, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for coming on, and thank you for sharing what is a beautiful song.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us a bit more about how you kind of got to this point where you're writing and producing and singing and mixing and arranging all of this music for yourself.
Wow, that's a big question. I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. In terms of the production side of things, I ended up working in Atmos. So that was really my first sort of foray into proper professional mixing, which then built my confidence to start working in stereo.
Oh, so you went Atmos first and then stereo?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow, not heard of anyone go that way around.
I was working in stereo, sort of working on my own stuff and in various projects before then. But I would say, like, professionally, I kind of started in Atmos and then worked my way back into stereo. If that makes sense.
Yeah, cool.
I think that's probably a bit of a strange sort of way to go. That was the route into the mixing and the mastering that I was doing.
That's great. So I'm assuming you mix all your music from now on. Have you had any experience outsourcing work to other mix engineers?
I've tried it a couple of times and it's never really worked for me.
I can relate.
Yeah, I think it's got something to do with, because I've got such a keen interest in every single side of production, like songwriting, mixing, mastering, and Atmos now as well. I've always kind of taken quite a holistic approach to the songwriting process, in the sense that I kind of see it all as one thing. So I'm kind of mixing when I'm writing and arranging, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So I've got an idea of where everything's going to go, sometimes from the inception of the idea. So, I mean, I know we'll listen to it later, but for example, there's two electric guitars finger picking in Build Behind Our Eyes, and that was deliberately written with the intention of that also being a mix choice, to have those two guitars there. So you kind of have that. So that then impacted how I wrote that part. There's a lot of sort of, ideas that pop in, and it's like, oh, but will that work in the mix, as well? So I'll often throw away ideas. There was like in the track that we're looking at today, there was a Rhodes part throughout the whole track. Originally, I actually wrote it on the Rhodes, and it just didn't work. So
that's
I went
funny,
back.
because that's exactly what I thought was missing from the track.
Really? Okay.
No, not at all. That's interesting, and that's fascinating to hear. I don't write like that, but I feel like I may start to, and it's very apparent, Paul, I'm sure you'll agree with this, when you get tracks from someone that they're thinking about it or not. In my experience, I'm just going to label it, guitar players are usually most guilty of this. How many guitars can we put into one track? And there's often a lack of awareness of certainly the mix, but
the big picture,
sometimes the productions, the bigger picture, the macro picture. All right, so let's get straight into one of the tracks, because we're here to get feedback from you and your professional opinions on what Paul and I have done on this lovely track. So first up, let's listen to Sam's mastered version of the song. This song is available on all streaming platforms. We will place a link in the description below. This is Build Behind Our Eyes by Sam Reck.
Brown eyes, I like the way that you smile. And I tried to say it every single time, but my pride led me down the wrong line. I was tired until you showed up in my life. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going when I know what I am knowing. I lost faith, now I know how to feel, yeah. And this race, you turned me around, now it's downhill. I found time till my memory fades. What's my crime? Keeping all the love you save. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going when I know what I am knowing. Maybe I'm in way above my head. Maybe I'm in way above my head. I'm still holding on to what you said. Maybe I'm in way above my head. Oh. Brown eyes, I like the way you smile. And I tried to say it every single time. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going. It keeps me going. I know that I have to let you know. I get goosebumps head to toe. Whenever I look to the future, I can feel behind our eyes. Brown eyes, I like the way that you smile. And I tried to say it every single time, but my pride led me down the wrong line. I was tired until you showed up in my life. I could wait forever just to see your face. I could wait forever just to see your face. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going. It keeps me going.
So, Paul, what struck you when you first heard this track? Obviously, it's got quite an interesting introduction that changes for the second verse, which I quite liked.
I thought it was a good mix. Thought it was a good mix and master. It was a good song, good production. I think everything was very well paced. I just think for me it was more macro level stuff, which is a good thing. I think when you're thinking macro and not micro, that's always the sign of a good mix, because I'm listening to the song. I'm not listening to like tiny mix details.
Yep.
So I felt the balance was very good. It was just overall I maybe felt like it was a little bit stodgy. I thought it was maybe the word. I think there was quite a bit of a low mid build up, and it was quite a warmish sounding track. So I knew that was kind of the vision of it. And the intro, I struggled with it because you won't have the files, people watching this, but it says cassette, and it's basically like a click of a cassette. Is it meant to be like the sound of it playing through a cassette, or is it meant to be the sound of it playing like through tape, or is it something else?
Yeah, basically, I wrote the verse and the chorus to this song in 2014, so quite a long time ago, and I only finished it in, 2024, yeah. That's the end of 24 is when I did the mix. So I kind of wanted to reflect that journey of the song through the mix, if that makes sense. And the original demo, obviously I didn't have a tape machine that I recorded the original demo onto. I kind of wanted to give the song a bit of a journey. That was really the last thing I actually did in the mix. So I think all I did was it was a high pass filter and a low pass filter. So it was sort of like 500, I think, hertz to like maybe around 2K. But what I did was I automated that EQ and I opened it up for the BVs, so you can hear that kind of grow into where the sort of the bass, slides down and the drums come in. So yeah, you're gonna have to remind me what your question was, because I've just gone off on a bit.
It was really just to see if it was like, if it was tape, or was it meant to be like a cassette sound? Because the reason I ask that is because me and Ed both went for tape, and I've got a feeling me and Ed used the same plugin, because there's a certain sound that Ed's got. There's a warble to it. So I'm going to take a guess, Ed. Was it the Arturia plugin that you used?
Don't use any Arturia plugins.
Ah, okay, interesting.
I think it was Baby Audio VHS.
Yeah, the wobble. Yeah, the wobble to it, the warp to it.
That was interesting that we went for the same idea, because I understood the tape reference and wanted to take that a little bit further and just give it a little bit of a warm tape wonk. I remember days leaving tapes in the car and they'd heat up and then you'd put them in the player and they'd just be a bit drunk. So I kind of wanted to do that. So that was interesting. We're on the same page with that.
Yeah, I think it was, for me, it was kind of, I wanted it to feel like, when you press play on the track, you're almost in the room with someone pressing, play on a tape machine, and then you kind of get sucked into the song. You're kind of like, well, what's going on with this? Well, this sounds really sort of lo-fi, a bit shit maybe. And then all of a sudden you've got that impact when, the band comes in. Yeah. That was kind of the intention behind that. But I liked, I think it was your mix, Ed. Lovely Day by Bill Withers, where you can kind of hear the tape.
Yeah.
Where he's holding that note. You kind of had that sort of 70s vibe.
I thought I heard that slightly on Paul's as well.
Yeah, I know what it was. I heard yours and I thought, it's maybe a bit too much. So I kind of went in the middle. I used I'm pretty sure it was free. It's an Arturia tape-fi or lo-fi, a lo-fi tape plugin, and you can choose by like the warble, and there's wow and flutter. So like I was mucking about with that and adding a bit of distortion to it to make it sound all gritty like an old tape player. But funnily enough, I didn't actually have that in the first one because I think it was so disjointed for me when I first heard it, because you're not expecting to hear kind of a lo-fi, kind of heavily kind of filtered kind of sound at the start. And then when I thought about it the next day, I listened to yours and I thought, no, let's just, in my head I was like, I would leave that maybe for the artist to do. But at the end of the day, what you did, Ed, was honour the rough. So I thought, okay, I'll give my representation of what I thought maybe I could do with it. And it's really important, Sam, that you tell that part of the story, because as a big part of a mix engineer that I'm learning and Ed's learning all the time is that you've got to understand what the artist's vision is. For me, it was a little bit difficult because I didn't know exactly what it was. Like a lot of times you would get that printed for you, so the intention was already done. So obviously we didn't have that. So at first I thought, I'll leave it out. But the more you speak about it, the more it's like, yeah, that is a quintessential part of the song. It's telling a journey. So as a mix engineer, that's really important to know. It's very important for those listening to hear that, because then obviously they get a bit of an understanding. I think that's a really nice way that you put it, and the way that you did that with the filters, because me and Ed did it very differently. I mean, we just automated it, Ed, didn't you? I just had to pick a very specific moment where I automated the tape plug-in on and off.
I did the high-low filters as well, and tried to get it as close to what Sam had. So when he said 502k, I was like, pretty sure that's why I did it.
Right, because when I heard yours, I thought it was maybe a bit of a jump where I could hear it kind of like going on and off. Where Sam's I thought was really well automated, where it really opened up.
It's interesting you picked up on that, because I think I did do a brick wall on-off with them.
I could hear it.
Certainly with the tape machine, I think I may have done a slope with the EQ, but it was quite quick to build it to land on the...
That was the difficulty.
On the bass slide and the rim click that comes in. So,
but I think just putting my mix engineer hat on, I also approached it the same way as you guys did originally, trying to get it sound like tape, running it through tape emulation plugins, that kind of thing. And then, you guys have mixed this very quickly, over the course of maybe a day or two, whereas I had time to go back and reflect. And that was when I was like, actually, I'm going to run it through an amp instead, that kind of thing. And that's how I kind of got to that sound. And then I had the time as well to kind of reflect on it and then go back and think, how can I get this to open up? Because it wasn't working when it would just sort of,
I know.
You'd have that filter, then all of a sudden, bang, it's in.
Yep.
So actually what's happening in the mix is that it's the backing vocals that actually bring you into that, because they actually very quickly, if you kind of listen to it, they sort of open up much sooner than the rest of the track in terms of the filter,
That's a nice idea. That is a nice idea.
So. Yeah, that is. But again, these are the things that's really good to hear, because again, these are little production tricks that again might help a lot of the people listening. Again, if you're needing to find a way of transitioning into, one style to another style. Overall, again, it was a quick turnaround. I was basically, I'd say 2 days on this, maybe a day and a half, because I wasn't really happy with the first mix the day after with fresh ears. But again, I just stuck as close to Sam's master as possible in terms of the balance of things. And again, I just kind of did what I thought really the track needed. So I chose to open it up a little bit more, make it a little bit less dense for me. And again, I think on hindsight, maybe it's a little bit less intimate. I think Sam are a really good intimate sounding.
That was hard to replicate, that.
Yeah, it was quite hard to do. And again, obviously that's the intention. But, as always, we're different mixers. And I think the whole point of it is to stick close to the rough, but give, Sam our interpretation of how we would take it and how we would think it would sound.
That's inevitable anyway, isn't it? As we've realised, we can be as close to a rough as we can, but it's still a Paul Thorne and Ed Thorne mix. With that in mind, let's have a listen to Paul Thorne's mix of Build Behind Our Eyes.
Brown eyes, I like the way that you smile. And I tried to say it every single time, but my pride led me down the wrong line. I was tired until you showed up in my life. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going when I know what I am knowing. I lost faith, now I know how to feel, yeah. And this race, you turned me round, now it's downhill. I found time till my memory fades. What's my crime? Keeping all the love you save. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going when I know what I am knowing. Maybe I'm in way above my head. Maybe I'm in way above my head. I'm still holding on to what you said. Maybe I'm in way above my head. Oh, brown eyes, I like the way you smile. And I tried to say it every single time. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going. It keeps me going. I know that I have to let you know. I get goosebumps head to toe. Whenever I look to the future, I can build behind our eyes. Brown eyes, I like the way that you smile. And I tried to say it every single time, but my pride led me down the wrong line. I was tired until you showed up in my life. I could wait forever just to see your face. I could wait forever just to see your face. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going. It keeps me going.
DistroKid sponsor the Working Audio Tools podcast, and you can get 30% off your first year's subscription using the VIP link in the YouTube video description and podcast show notes. DistroKid makes distribution of your music easy with unlimited uploads, and you get to keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. Join over 1 million artists who rely on DistroKid to get their music into Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all other streaming platforms now and in the future. The new DistroKid app is available on iOS. Go and download it from the App Store now. From here, you can upload new releases. You can see your DistroKid earnings and withdraw these earnings. You can view and share your hyperfollow links. You can check your streaming statistics from Spotify and Apple, and even add and edit lyrics and song titles. So keep track of your releases on the move with the new DistroKid app, available on iOS. Download it from the App Store now.
It's quite a modern approach, isn't it?
As always, I always tend to go very modern now.
It's particularly in the kick and the bass. There's it's very, very consistent throughout, which is great, and that's what a lot of people want to hear. They want their kick and their bass consistent throughout. So it's not, you don't want to lose that. I think the approach I took with this mix myself was, when Charlie the drummer, when he's playing the kick and he's playing it softly, I kind of took the opposite approach, and I was like, I'm going to leave that, and if it's only barely audible, then so be it. That's how we played it on the session, kind of thing. But when I heard your mix, I was like, oh man, yeah, this is cool. I like this. It's kind of, you've sort of brought out the groove.
That was the main thing I was trying to do on this, was really focus on the groove, focus on the bass more. I worked a lot on the bass to try and just get everything to kind of just groove a little bit more.
So what did you do? Because your bass was very different to Ed's bass. I would say Ed's bass was probably a bit more kind of almost rocky. There was a bit more bark in it. But
yeah.
So what did you do to the bass in particular? I'd be really interested to know, just from a mixing point of view.
Pretty simple for me. I just use one plugin, really, Bass Shaper from WA Productions, my good friend Emma Chelik's plugin. And all I do with that is I genuinely just go through the features till it sounds right. So what I did a little bit different was there's a attack and sustain. So I added a little bit of attack with the transient designer in there, just to bring out a little bit more of the punch. Again, and he's got a saturation EQ, so it's basically adding a kind of low end saturation. I didn't do any upper mid-range. I did that in the first mix I sent you, and I think that's what I didn't like. And a little bit of sub enhancement. So again, there's a little bit of filter, almost like what Voice of God does, if anybody knows that plugin. So there's a little bit of sub going on. I was dialing in his punch, which is compression, a little bit more, just so I can kind of get it to where I wanted it. A little bit of deboom, so taking out the low end sustain to clean things up a little bit. And I think that would have been it. And I think the only other thing I did was I went to stage 1 and I added a little bit of mono spread, just to get the bass a little bit out of the middle to kind of leave space for the kick. And then the kick and the bass was being sidechained by the kick with the whole Jason Joshua soothe technique. But yeah, that was really it. 1 plugin, 2 with stage 1. And yeah, I was just using my ears to get things to sound right. And that's the way I kind of feel like I find it easier to mix now. See, when you've got like 2 or 3, 4 different plugins, there's more and more different things to get wrong, where just one plugin, I can bypass it in and out. I could just make changes, and that was all I did. Honestly, Bass Shaper's been making my mixes really consistent in the bass. I think it's something you've noticed, Ed, where the basses have been kind of quite consistent. But yeah, just one plugin, everything to taste. Job done.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm pretty interested in how you approach the vocal, to be honest. I mean, obviously, it's such a key component of the track. It just felt very consistent throughout.
Right, so in terms of the vocals, it was the way I've always done it. So I won't go too much into the whole process because it'd be a little bit convoluted. But it was the same secret. But it was the same compressor technique that I always do. So the stay level was the main lead compressor. Then I had a stereo vocal, so I basically duplicate the vocal twice, put it left and right for the Haas effect. Left is getting the LA2A heavy compression, and the right is getting a BA6A heavy compression. Then I feather all that into taste. And then a little bit of vocal shaper at the end. I'm actually using the leveler now, Ed, because I think I was using it too much before. But just at the very end of the vocal bus, just enough of the leveler, just to kind of tucks it in and makes it a little bit consistent. I have like a chamber as a big verb. I had a little bit of slapback on there, a little bit of a quarter note delay and an eighth note delay. Again, everything just feathered in, just so like I can create a little bit of space around the vocal. But in terms of things like really keeping steady, it's just compression. Compression's always my best friend. That's the reason why the stay level is normally my vocal compressor of choice, because it does what it says on the tin. It just stays level. But again, sometimes what I'll do is I'll alternate the compressors depending on the voice. So sometimes the lead vocal might be the LA2A, might be the one that takes the lead, and stay level becomes, the left one on the Haas compression technique. But yeah, basically just, keeping it simple, just a good choice of compression, and being, not afraid to compress stuff. I think that's what a lot of people do.
Brown eyes, I like the way that you smile. And I tried to say it every single time, but my pride led me down the wrong line. I was tired until you showed up in my life. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going when I know what I am knowing. I lost faith, now I know how to feel, yeah. And this race, you turned me around, now it's downhill. I found time till my memory fades. What's my crime? Keeping all the love you save. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going when I know what I am knowing. Maybe I'm in way above my head. Maybe I'm in way above my head. I'm still holding on to what you said. Maybe I'm in way above my head. Oh, brown eyes, I like the way you smile. And I tried to say it every single time. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going. It keeps me going. I know that I have to let you know. I get goosebumps head to toe. Whenever I look to the future, I can build behind our eyes. Brown eyes, I like the way that you smile. And I tried to say it every single time, but my pride led me down the wrong line. I was tired until you showed up in my life. I could wait forever just to see your face. I could wait forever just to see your face. I could wait forever just to see your face, 'cause it keeps me going. It keeps me going.
Paul, I committed a cardinal sin doing this mix, and I
What did you
made
do?
quite the error. Well, I sat on it for a bit, and you were away, and I thought, yeah, that's fine, I like that. And then I listened to it again a couple of days ago and thought, ooh, I just want to change 3 or 4 things. And I went into the session, and I made some changes, and I hadn't saved an alternative version.
Ooh.
So when I got whatever changes I'd made, it just affected the feel, the openness of it, the intimacy that I had, and the energy. And whatever I changed just messed it up. And I even tried going back to like a previous backup in Pro Tools, and that didn't work. So anyway, I tried loads of different things. I even tried mastering the track and doing a few things, and eventually just thought, you know what, I'm just going to submit that mix because I'm happy with the vibe and the energy. And if there's a few technical things, like I think the BVs are too loud at some point, not loud enough at one point, when the strings all double up at the very end, I think it swamps the vocals. The cassette was a bit loud in places at the end mainly, and there was something in the vocal I wanted to pull out. Like there was a tonal bump between about 200 and 500 hertz, which I did manage to get out quite successfully today on a master by dipping 3 dB, and that took down about 1.5 dB, which just takes away that slight kind of ear-pulling low mid. But it's not about what I think. Sam, what did you think?
I think I keep coming back to the vocal, and there's kind of a reason why I keep coming back to the vocal in a way. It's because the vocal is actually the demo that I recorded originally for the track. So I recorded it late at night in a makeshift vocal booth, which I did with basically just a drum machine and the Rhodes. I remember sitting in this very room and playing it, and Mark and James sat there. When I said to them, yeah, I need to re-record that vocal, I said, why? And they said it kind of felt like it had an intimacy to it. There was an authenticity to it. You know, they liked the performance.
Yeah.
So I kind of, from my point of view, wondered, was there anything about the vocal that maybe you guys struggled with?
No, honestly, I
Yeah.
thought that it was really well recorded. I thought the performance was really good. Again, I don't like to tune vocals, but again, I didn't feel like there was any tuning issues. I thought that, I just thought it was a really well recorded vocal that was very easy for me to put through my vocal chain. EQ compression, that was all it needed. I thought it was like a very well recorded vocal for me.
What microphone did you use?
But this, I think it was an L22 Sphere or something like that.
Yeah, there was something that I know is in your voice, I think, but it was coming out, and I assumed it was a microphone thing. And I tried softening it with Soothe and Pro Q4, and nothing was getting rid of this texture. So I just thought, well, I'm just going to embrace it. if it's clearly part of the character of the artist and the song. So yeah, that was a choice on my part to kind of embrace what was there. Same with the kick drum thing you mentioned earlier. Paul's flattened his, and you've left yours organic. I kind of went in between the two.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, it was
just to kind of give it some lilt, because I'm a drummer. I know how a double note on a pedal goes. Second one's always louder. Otherwise, you're into metal territory where it's going dad 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 dad, and it's a bit robotic and not very musical. So yeah, I mean the vocal for me went through my usual chain now, which is Pro Q4 to help isolate some of the plosives. There were a few plosives in there. In spectral mode, that works quite well. I've also used Goldfoss for that, but I use Pro Q4.
Do you not use spiff? Remember I told you about the spiff technique I always use?
I don't have it, and I'm not going to pay for it.
Right, for anybody that's got, okay, cheap-ass bastard, right. Well, anybody who's got spiff, there is a preset, because like a plosive setting, I use it on every single vocal that I do. I use it on this voiceover. Ed's voice will get it. My voice gets it. Sam's voice will get it. Even on mix phones, I do it. And what it does is it just takes all of the attack out of all the like the low end attack from maybe like 20 all the way up to maybe like 200, 300, and it just allows those plosives not to kind of take over, but it does it in a very dynamic way. So if anybody are thinking about a good like thing for deplosive and you've got spiff's like a really good, or just a multi-band transient designer. It's a little trick for you.
All right, I'll reach out to OX Sound and see if I can blag it.
Use those flex those YouTuber muscles, Ed.
And then it basically goes through my analog chain, which is a Wes Audio Hyperion EQ, although I don't think I did much. Then into a Mimus, which is an 1176 style FET compressor, literally set to fastest attack, almost fastest release, 4:1. And then into my Wes Audio Rear, which is a tube compressor, doing maximum 4 dB, and that just levels it out. And then it goes into Vocal Shaper, where I don't use much of the modules, many of the modules, but the leveler is one that is just doing a little bit. The leveler basically
do you use
level.
The D-Mod, Ed? I've been using the D-Mod quite a lot on it. I think it's quite
if it
quite
needs
good.
it, but I try and do that by ear in Pro Q4 or on the Hyperion.
Okay.
Now, some people are asking, why do you use two EQs? You've got phase shifting issues. If that's a problem, I'd use one. But because Q4's got dynamics and the spectral thing, I find it's quite useful. And then the Hyperion's kind of just tonal shaping after that. So that's yeah. So that does deliver a very level-wise consistent, and I think sonically consistent vocal sound. Is that what you're getting at, Sam?
Yeah, I was just, it was very consistent throughout. And I think that's definitely a taste thing, isn't it? Some people, they really want their vocal to sound consistent in terms of the dynamic range throughout. They don't want it to sort of deviate too much.
It's quite a modern approach to mixing.
That's a very modern approach,
yeah,
exactly. I did have a quick look at what my vocal, I got the mix up. I think it's the right mix as well. And my vocal chain was literally just Logic stock EQ. And then I think there's an 1176 on there doing very similar to what you described. And that's it. The rest of it's all just automation on the whole track, which surprised me.
Yeah, that's surprising, yeah.
Yeah, I think with that stuff, Paul and I are lazy, so we'd rather use two compressors and a leveler.
Yeah. No, I get it completely.
I think it's because
But
it's like
it
the modern
gives you
sound,
that
doesn't
sound.
it? Yeah, it does.
It
I
gives
think
you that sound.
For me and Ed, I think that like we've been so used to, well, especially for me, Spike and Serban, because they're like my main references a lot. Like if you listen to a Spike Stent mix, everything is like compressed, everything is leveled to an inch of its life, and I think it's just that modern approach. But I think it's quite good that like we have people like, say, like me, that'll go for a very modern approach. Then it's got people like yourself, Sam, that we'll go for that very dynamic, take the time to get like the automation and get a very organic, dynamic, natural sounding record, because there will be people out there that want that sound. Yeah, there'll be labels that will want that kind of very modern, compressed, very level sound, but there'll be so many people, so many artists that will want that very dynamic, organic, because it really is. I think of it as organic, because what I do think your mix does, especially, there's a really, and I thought about whether to automate it up, but then it would be going into the limiting a little bit, but I found that it's like in the breakdown bit, I felt like everything raises up, where I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like the levels kind of all came up, especially the backing vocals, because I had to automate my backing vocals to kind of sit more with yours, because it's like the backing vocals are at a level, and then as the song grows, that felt like the backing vocals were just getting lifted, especially at it's like near the end of the song. It's like it kind of lifts, and it's like behind our eyes, and I was like, oh, right, okay, he's really building the dynamic. It's like dynamic textures. I think that you did really well, but yeah, I suppose you could say me and Ed just done the old, like, I wouldn't say flat as a pancake, Ed, but very level, very consistent. But it's two very good approaches, and I think it's very good for people to hear about. At the end of it is, right, there's so many ways to mix, and it's subjective, and it's all down to taste, but it's great to hear. That's what I love about doing these 3 ways, is that you could hear 3 mixes, the same song, and they all sound different. And that's okay. And in the end of the day, they all sound good. I'd listen to all 3 of them, and I would say, okay, Ed's is maybe a little bit too bright for my taste, but I think apart from that, the rest of the mix is stellar. I think your mix, Sam, is stellar. Again, they've all got their own place, and it's very interesting for people to see and hear different approaches, because that's what music's all about, isn't it? At the end of the day.
Yeah, well, it was quite nice listening to both of your mixes, and you obviously have your own approach. I know, Ed, for example, you like your rock music. At least I can kind of hear that a little bit in the mix, in the bass and stuff like that. There's a bit more bark in there. But what was really nice about it was that I still felt like it worked. Every choice you guys made, it still worked, and it still served the song. Mm-hmm. It was just a slightly different sonic signature, which is, when you're talking about classic kind of, revered mix engineers, they've got a signature sound. Correct. And sometimes you want people to come to you because they want their track to sound a certain way. So it's interesting. I mean, I think Peter Gabriel recently actually released an album where he got 3 different mix engineers.
Spike Stent and Chad Blake. I know, 2 double-sided album.
And then there was another guy who did the Atmos.
Yeah, no. Oh, yeah, you're right. Somebody else did the Atmos as well. You're totally right. 3 mixers on an album. That's crazy. Yeah.
And they're vastly different. It's incredible. And they're both great in their own way. They work really well, but one's really bright, one's really dark. I seem to remember one's more dynamic, one's less dynamic. And
in some of those mixes as well, they've almost like just muted certain instruments, and then you listen to other mixes and like, oh God, that's such an interesting decision that you've made there. And it's the job of a mix engineer is to, as you say, bring the track to life, but also understand the journey of the emotional journey of the song, or whatever the song is about, and try and really bring that across to the listener. And it's a hard job, it's not an easy job. And when someone like, it's kind enough of you guys to ask me to be part of this, but when someone sends you a track and there's like all those different things going on in there, especially with the backing vocals, it's not like, it's not just something that you can pull up and go, oh yeah, I'll just set and forget all these kinds of things. You've got to really sort of like, invest your time into it. And I appreciate you guys actually taking the time to, try and find that sound, rather, because you could have just, done it, set it, forget really quick, run it through your chain, and that's it,
Yeah, let's talk about intention, because you mentioned my bass sound being quite rocky. I am naturally going to gravitate towards that, but there was actually some intention behind that in a lot of the song. It's drums and the bass, and that's what's driving it. So I wanted to give it that presence. But as Paul's alluded to, it is on the brighter side compared to your 2 mixes. So maybe as a result of having that presence in the foundation, everything else has got a little bit bright to compensate for it. But
I agree with you. The very last verse, after all the BVs are and everything, when it drops back down, it's bass, drums, vocal, and then a touch of strings. So you need to fill that space. Where, say, traditionally a guitar would sit or something like that. So it's definitely the right call to do that with the bass.
I actually disagree
I like it.
a little bit. This is where me and Ed come in a little bit, because I always feel like we do need to give each other still feedback. Now, here's the thing, right? I didn't notice it, that distortion you put in the bass, until that exact section that Sam's talking about. Because the bass was more exposed, I was like, oh wow, I could tell he's added distortion to that. And for me, it was just a little bit, it wasn't really in keeping, because I see the song as a very soft, kind of mellowy song. And I just could hear it. I was like, that's maybe not a bit. And then there was, okay, and I have to say one thing, and this is let's have a bit of banter, okay? Because the last time we did a mix, like one of Sam's mixes, I made a terrible decision in hindsight, and I decided to change the snare altogether. Now, I noticed that Ed did the same, Ed. There was definitely a sample you put in, or you've massively processed it differently. Well, you did something very, very different. Now, and this time, I kept the snare, no samples. I kept the snare.
No samples in mine.
Right,
yeah, Ed's not. I don't think Ed's changed the snare.
So what did you do?
Because you've compressed your snare quite a lot.
Yes, is that what it is? It was one of the two. I thought either you'd added in a sample and more of the sample, or you'd very hard compressed the snare. And I was like, oh, that's a very forthright choice there.
There's a lot of compression, because that snare drum, again, I think we discussed it on I Can't Stop. He's a great player, Chris. What's his second name?
Very good player.
Charlie Kenny.
Charlie Kenny
playing on this stuff. Yeah,
traditionally I hate drummers. It's rare that I find one. I think, he plays it. He doesn't play in a way I would play. He doesn't play with a sound I would play with. And a snare drum I would typically tune to, but love his playing, and I just wanted to embrace that snare sound again, so I did, and that involved compressing it and bringing out the sound.
I wouldn't necessarily say that that's Charlie's snare sound. I would say that that's Sam turning up on the session and saying, I want that piccolo snare and I want it tuned.
That's the artist snare drum, even better.
In a certain way, so it cuts through in the mix, because and that's what we were talking about earlier, when he's hitting the snare, like the rim shots and stuff. On my mix, I've done nothing to that snare. There's not a compressor in sight. There's nothing on it whatsoever. It's purely just sitting there in the mix as it sounded, coming through the overheads and the mic on the snare. But that's because I knew that that's the sound I wanted when I got to the mix anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's which kind of gives me a bit more sort of dynamic space to breathe with it, So
explain your decision to me, Ed, because I just found it interesting, because I heard Sam's and I was like, okay, well, as you said, Sam, I could hear that you didn't really process it. I didn't really think there was any really much compression on it. I put a little bit of compression on it, but I kept the original snare as it was, and I kind of tried to keep more in keeping with what you had, where I noticed with you, Ed, you just went to town on it. And it's got a sound. I was just surprised. So I'm just like, I'd like to kind of get your thoughts and intention on that.
Again, thinking about the energy of the track.
Okay.
Especially with the rim click as well. Those rim clicks I wanted more of, I think, than in your mix, Sam. Maybe that's the drummer talking, but it felt a little bit towards the back, which would make sense if none of it was compressed. So you've left the dynamic headroom for the main snare. So I wanted to kind of bring the two together a little bit, so not too much of an extreme. But also with the EQ on the snare was mostly geared towards the rim click, because rim clicks can be quite piercing. I think 2K was pretty strong on this one, which can clash. So there was, EQ and compression from a bringing out the rim click and bringing out the resonance of the snare drum. So again, there was intent behind it.
Yeah, it was interesting.
If it was wrong, it was wrong.
but to be fair, Ed, those were only three things I would say. I would say it was just a little bit too bright for me. I would have wanted the bass to be cleaner and less saturated, and then again less compression on that snare. And that Ed would be the only things that I would say. I thought the rest of it you'd done a really, really good job. Like again, I wouldn't have anything else to say about it. Was there anything about my mix, Ed,
thank you,
that you were like, that was interesting, or maybe something?
Yeah, let me just consult my notes.
Yes.
My first thought was, okay, this is a headphone mix.
Okay.
Listening on my speakers, I thought, okay, I think it wasn't your usual forwardness in the width.
Now, was this the first mix or the revised mix?
The tweak.
The tweak. Okay, good.
And then I thought, hang on, he actually may have honoured Sam's levels a bit more, because by the time because I did this weeks ago now, so by the time I'm listening to this again, I was like, oh, actually, I can't quite remember what Sam's mix sounded like in comparison. and then A-B'd the 3. And I think where in places I was maybe a bit bold with the strings and the backing vocal levels.
Yeah, you were a little bit on the loud side with the strings.
Yeah, that's what
times.
I tried to bring down in a couple of places when I cocked up the remix, the revision. So, but then I thought, okay, Paul's done his on headphones because they're a little bit further back than maybe he intended. But then when I was going between the 3, I was like, no, it kind of works. Yeah, very controlled levels on everything, as always, which for me I felt stifled the intimacy and the openness.
I would take that on board. I think that's a good point. I think
what you did really well, and I reckon it is just through lack of compression.
Yeah.
Is created such an intimate
I agree.
sound. I was actually struggling to bring that in to the mix. So lesson for me is, well, actually maybe less compression on things could help give it that intimacy. It was almost like you're in your mix.
Yeah, I made mine wider and deeper. Yeah, mine's wider, deeper, where Sam's is a little bit more crushed in, but in a good way, but it's very intimate. Everything's still very well balanced, but it's like when it A-B like Sam's and my mix, so you could hear that it's like, okay, Paul wants it to be more open and like you're really inside it. But it's like, I would say that Sam's tells the story better, which makes sense because Sam's the artist at the end of the day. And I think that's something you did really well, Sam, in your mix, was you gave your intent of the story. I think my mix sounds more like a mix. You can tell that I've been like trying to make it sonically a certain way, where I think yours just is the story and it is the song. And I think that's a very, very important thing and a good character to have, is when you can tell a story. And I think that's the great thing about your mix, is that from start to finish, you dynamically tell the story as well. Not just like, again, in the lyricism and the production, dynamically. I think you do a good job. It's just that I'm just so used to everything being so controlled. But it was a really, really, really good approach that you took. And I think it's great for everybody, again, as I said earlier, to hear 3 different approaches, because all of them sound good in their own right. But yeah, it's just always interesting. I love actually doing these, Ed, and getting to hear different interpretations of a mix, because it's amazing how you could hear it one way and it works, but then somebody does something else different and that works as well. And you're like, it's in your head, you wouldn't think it would, but it does. That's music for you, isn't it?
DistroKid hosts a range of visually engaging social media promotion tools to help your release stand out from the crowd. Creative and colourful social media cards incorporate your artwork to help your release stand out. These are free to download and can be highly effective promoting your release. DistroKid also offer mini videos, which are free, short, customizable videos incorporating your artwork and a short clip of your track. And if this wasn't enough, DistroKid also have a tool to create a Spotify canvas generator, which is the video that plays in the background when you're playing a song on Spotify. Simply choose a theme and choose from dozens of different creative artwork concepts. These are free to use and great for engaging your audience, available on DistroKid. For an additional subscription of $8.25 a month, you can get your music videos distributed to Apple Music, Vivo, and Tidal, and you'll keep 100% of your royalties. With DistroVid from DistroKid.
You guys have already alluded to it quite strongly about the kind of telling the story of the song through the mix, essentially, and actually sometimes the approach of less is more, perhaps, with some elements of the track, sort of leaving them a little bit in terms of, like, I'm trying to think of an example. So, like, where the strings first come in, like the vocal kind of drops down, it's not as loud, kind of leaning into that more rather than trying to have the vocal the same level throughout the whole track, allowing the vocal to go down with the rest of the track and then bringing it back up.
Would you say less compression or more automation, or a bit of both?
Yeah, a bit of both, I would think. Yeah. Maybe a little bit less compression and a bit more automation. I think the main part for me was actually the mid-late, where all the backing vocals come in. I think you both kind of took what was probably labelled as being on the lead vocal, because that's where I sang it, as being the lead vocal.
You brought the backing vocals up and the lead vocal down a bit, yeah.
Yeah. So for me, the intention there was kind of, that's almost like a group kind of part to basically give the track a bit of light and shade, because when you come out of that section where you've got all the vocals together, it drops right down into just being the bass and the drums, with sort of little pepperings of strings. So that would really just try and follow the arc of the song a little bit more.
Okay.
Without the need to constantly keep everything
Level and
level,
Yeah.
essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I know is almost the antithesis of
modern pop records now.
modern mixing and all that kind of stuff. So I completely get it. I get where you're coming from with the mix. I think for me, it's just about allowing the track to breathe a bit. And to be honest with you, like, this wasn't the easiest mix for me to do either because of exactly the same things. I think the first time I mixed it, I kind of went a bit heavy on it, and I remember I remember it very clearly. I removed all the plugins. I obviously got my kick in, my kick out, my snare top, bottom, and everything else. And what I did was I balanced all of those up and then just had like a kick sum, a snare sum, and then my hi-hats and my toms. And I think I chose one overhead because I think there's an overhead and then two cymbals as well, but I can't quite remember. And I basically mixed it without plugins on. I just did it completely, what we, I kind of refer to it as a board mix. I was just sort of pushing faders and trying to kind of see where the vocal took me, how loud I wanted it to go. And what I found is when I pulled back everything, when that snare comes in, that full snare, it's got room to breathe. You kind of feel it a bit more. It's like, oh, wow, there's a bit more impact there. Whereas, I mean, ironically, like Ed's snares got more impact because you feel it. It's more aggressive. And but I think for me, it's almost the comparison, isn't it? If you kind of listen through comparison, all of a sudden when you hear that snare that's untreated with that dynamic range, even though it might not be as powerful, objectively speaking, as your snare, Ed, I feel like I can feel it a little bit more cutting through because it's a thing, isn't it? It's a real thing.
Because you're not really compressing it, obviously what you're doing is you've got almost like full transients coming in. So you're basically allowing basically the fullness of the snare to kind of come in. And it is very, very organic. And I do like what you talk about the space. And I think what would be really, really, really good for people to take from this episode would be the importance of sitting down with the artist. Again, if you've got the rough and, okay, we had a full mastered mix, but to kind of sit, imagine it was a rough, and to sit down with you, Sam, and get every little nuance that you've spoken about there. Because if me and Ed had all of those details, it would have massively changed the way that we mixed the record because we would have understood the vision. And I think that's something that sometimes makes the best mixers is not a lot about, their skill set and their tools and their gear. It's about understanding the client's vision and talking to them in detail about exactly how they want it to feel. So really, how the mix sounds is irrelevant. It's how it makes them feel, which many people like Manny Marroquin talk about. It's all about the feel. So yeah, I think it's fascinating to talk about your approach to it. And knowing that, Sam, if I would have started this again from start and it was like, right, I need to get the mix accepted, I would have to take a very, very different approach. But only because I understand
from
your
the start
vision
as well. It's not even like, I think you could go back in now to the sessions and tweak a few things. I'd say this is
I would agree.
A start again from
100%.
Scratch job. But this has been a great episode because I think, Paul, where you and I are is, you were talking about the great guys, maybe the greats with their experience. I think experience would teach them to follow that and to hear that in the reference mix. Whereas we've missed that element here. So that maybe that's just displaying a little bit of a lack of experience of different approaches to mixing where we're pretty much in the lane of kind of modern and controlled.
Very modern. Very, very modern.
Whereas to be a diverse mix engineer, you'd need to be aware of all this. It's like being a diverse musician. I can't just play rock drums and then go on a jazz gig and expect to sound like a jazzer. It's like you've got to mix in all lanes. And
I went there with the mix myself. I was compressing it and then I realised, like those guitars, the amp is doing that for me. It's already doing that with the signal. I don't need to actually sometimes the need to just feel like I'm doing something to a mix can sometimes actually take away. And I'm not saying that that's what's happened with your mix, because actually I think your mixes are great and they work. That's the main thing. If you heard either of your mixes on the radio, I don't think anyone would turn and go, God, that's a shit mix, would they? You've still served the song. You'd still listen to the song. Someone's not going to turn around.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's definitely an approach I've been taking a lot with projects I've been working on this year, is just kind of looking at what I've got and not jumping in straight away, and actually just setting my levels and even just leaving it and going back to it. If you're fortunate enough to leave it for a day and then go back and have a listen again, and it really kind of opens your eyes as to how much you need to do. And another thing as well for me has been like loudness, really stepping back from loudness, stepping back a little bit from like, the LUFS and being like, oh, I need to hit this limit, and actually just going, actually, it doesn't matter.
I think this is the quietest mix I've submitted this year.
It is, minus 11.5. That's definitely the quietest Ed's done.
Normally I'm hitting minus 9 to 10.
But it's great though, isn't it, Ed? It's great to have that dynamicism. It's great to have the headroom. It's great to not feel
it does make a difference.
You've got to push
musical.
it. Yeah, musical. That's the thing. See, when we push things, and this is what annoys me, and again, I will get many EDM guys like jumping on me right now, because many people are like, yeah, but heavy limiting, that's the sound, like -6, -5, flat as a pancake, that's the sound of EDM. I'm like, oh my God, it's not musical though. It's not musical. Like, you're losing the musicality by trying to get the loudness. The more you compress it, the more you limit stuff, the more you reduce the headphone, the more you reduce the headphone, fucking headphones on the brain, you reduce the headroom. Again, you're bringing all that lower level stuff up, which means
it's
getting
very
more
different
noise
musical cultures though, isn't it? EDM's aiming for huge club PA systems where they want to be louder than the next track, and the DJ doesn't notice, they just think it's better because it's louder. Whereas this track probably isn't going to get played at Ministry of Sound unless it's remixed, which maybe could be, but it's more of an organic representation of a live feel, isn't it, I guess?
And that's why it's important to have the dynamics. And it was great for me, Sam, when you sent it through and I seen it was mastered, but it was mastered at minus 11.5, because I knew that is a level where you could just need a little bit of limiting in there and it's still going to sound organic, and it's not going to sound lifeless, and it's still going to retain the dynamicism. So yeah, I think there was lots and lots of really nice positives to take out of this mix. And again, I really appreciate you giving me and Ed the opportunity to work on it, because it's always great to work with great recordings and great performances, and a vision to go off on as well.
Well, I think it's actually something that I discussed with Mark a lot when we were actually doing I Can't Stop, and we were doing our own mix competition for that, and actually going through the song and breaking it down into sections. So not even thinking about it like a verse and a chorus, but mixing each section separate, almost, and then that kind of lends it a different energy. A lot of the tracks I've released this year have been mixed in completely different ways. Like there's one track that I released called Human Race, which literally I bust every element through, like I'd have the drums, I'd have the bass all on one fader, and then I'd have it mixed, but then I'd go through and I'd literally be moving it where it felt right. And you'd sort of, if you listen closely, you can kind of say if you dip into that mix like 3 minutes as opposed to a minute and a half, it would be so much quieter, but you don't notice it when you're sort of moving through the song. And that's kind of something that Mark's taught me.
That's like the Beastie Boys. They used to live mix, didn't they? When they were going to tape, there'd be two of them, and they'd orchestrate this dance basically around the board to try and get different levels and panning and filters moving.
Brower was doing it for years. I can't remember what record it was. Brower was talking about they used the SSL console like an instrument, and Brower was on one end of the SSL, somebody was in the middle and somebody was at the start, and they knew which parts to come in and they knew when to move certain things. And again,
it was a choreographed dance around the desk. That's what they were doing back in the day.
And we missed that now. We do miss that now and again, because it is easy for me and Ed, to take the whole... I know what I was wrong. I was going to say the whole CLA approach, because actually if you watch CLA's mix with the masters, he uses a lot of automation. Yes, he'll use like a lot of compression for certain characteristics and to bring life to something if it needs it, but he uses a lot. He's using automation a lot, and I think he's one of the best at it, actually. And I think it's something that I did bits and bobs of automation on this, but I know I could have been more forceful. And I think because sometimes, Ed, we are so focused on getting the mix done and getting to a point where we could do 2-3 mixes a day, the idea of sitting down and like having to fully automate and ride a vocal, by ear because it takes so long. Sometimes it's that balance between trying to work fast, but actually getting a more natural result and a more emotional result. It's an interesting topic,
But it's experience that will teach us that.
yeah, I agree.
I mean, we're kind of in a bit of a content heavy age now, aren't we? Where you have to be able to churn out mix after mix after mix, especially if you're, a successful mix engineer. And, if I think back to the records that I really admire, I grew up listening to Steely Dan, James Taylor, Paul Simon, all those kinds of guys. And, they'd spend months mixing sometimes. Other times they wouldn't. Other times they just, they get it done very quickly because you kind of know and feel where the track needs to go. But it's like you say, they're on a console. It's a performance. The mix is a performance, which therefore means the mix breathes.
Correct.
And the more I've kind of pulled myself back, the more I've started deleting plugin subscriptions and just sticking to I use the Pro Q4 that you talk about. I love that plugin. That's a brilliant EQ, for example. Just the way the workflow of it and everything helps me be more creative and helps me visualize what I want to do very quickly. There are some plugins like that are game changers for me personally. But the more I've deleted, that another 1176 kind of emulation or whatever, and actually focus more on how do I want this to feel? Where's the emotional gut punch in this song? As soon as I put myself in that headspace when I'm mixing, then I get there a lot quicker. But we have to, as mix engineers who are working and need to earn money, we have to find a way to kind of set our time so we can maybe start mixing something on a Monday morning and then go back to it at the end of the week before there's that urge to hit send and go, I've done your mix,
Oh, I always send stuff the day after. I've got it down to now being able to do a mix in a day. This 3 mixes a day thing isn't going to happen without people doing the prep and doing the pre-mixing stuff. But a mix in a day, I've done that a couple of times in a row now. But then I've gone back the day after with fresh ears, and it's usually just a couple of things that I'm hearing on the speakers, and I never go back to headphones for the second day. It's always the Amphions in the room. I feel that gives me a slightly more honest vibe again. Although a lot of the mixing is now done on headphones.
When you're mixing, do you ever have the opportunity to just sit someone else in the chair and listen? Because I find that when I do that, I hear it differently as soon as someone else
you're
is.
so right. Yeah, it's like when you play someone a song and you're like, my vocals did not sound that shit in the studio.
Yeah.
Do you find this? Your mobile phone highlights vocal tuning issues. You might not because you're a great singer, but I definitely do.
That's very kind of you to say. I don't actually listen to music on a phone speaker, to be honest with you.
Good man.
I think, I think that I'd be shot if I did that. We've lost Paul.
We have lost Paul. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and theys. You may have noticed it's been a bit of a scattered, stuttered episode. We've had some technical issues, so there are just 2 of us left. But I would like to ask one more question. As a writer, mixer, producer, where are you getting your work from? Are you doing a variety of stuff, or is it do you make a living doing only your own stuff? Are you gigging still?
I'm not doing a lot of gigging anymore, to be honest. A lot of the gigs I actually do now are piano vocal gigs where I turn up and I just sort of like run through lots of different songs, and kind of because of my arranging background, I can almost be like a piano DJ, and I just sort of jump between lots of different songs and people seem to dig it. But I'm not really doing a lot of that anymore. The main thing that I'm doing is like I said earlier, the Atmos work. Obviously, I'm very, very fortunate to be able to work with both Mark and James here at Present Day Production in this wonderful Atmos suite. And really, a lot of the work that I'm getting is kind of just word of mouth. I don't really have much of a massive social media presence, although I do need to try and change that. People either have heard my stuff either in previous projects and then they get in touch and they need a bit of help with their own project, and then we kind of, it spirals from there, and then someone else who's in that band might have their own project that they're working on, and then they kind of say, oh, can you help me produce that? I really liked how it sounded there. But then also, a really interesting thing happened last year where the artist Greg Fote asked us to work on his album Glass Frog in Atmos. And as you guys know, Mark is an incredibly busy man, and it kind of got left a little bit. So I stepped in and finished off the project, ended up mixing, I think, about 6 of the 8 tracks on the record or something like that in Atmos. And then from that kind of relationship developed, and now I'm doing Greg's mastering, and I've been, working with lots of other artists as well. So that was a really useful moment for me, was to sort of almost take over the reins from someone like Mark, who's kind of like been a massive mentor for me. So yeah, a lot of the works come from labels associated with both Mark and other people. And then obviously there's my own stuff, which again has been quite a learning curve, because it's a bit of an interesting sort of situation I found myself in, because I wrote a lot of these songs sort of in like 2021, 2022, the ones that I'm now releasing. And I got to a point where I'm in my 30s now. So when I started doing music, it was very much a case of, right, you go and record, you put a CD together, and then you shop it around to labels or whatever else. Showing my age a bit here. And in 2024, I was kind of like, yeah, okay, I need to find a label. And every time I spoke to a label or got a bit of interest, either it was a door in the face, or, your stuff's not going to sell, or it was a really, really, really crap deal. And I kind of thought to myself, I need to find a way to get my stuff out there, but also get stuff out there for artists that I'm working with. An artist will often finish an incredible project and then close the book on it, and not sort of see the next part of the stage, which is, well, people have got to listen to this great material. They're already thinking about the next thing. Creative people are often just being creative. So I wanted to try and find a way of using the music I was writing as almost like a test case. How can I reach an audience without the support of a label, without the support of distribution, whatever? How can I do it myself? And then how can I do that with the artists that I'm working with? So that's actually the space I'm kind of working in now. It's almost like a hybrid of production, but also treating what happens after the record's released as also part of the production. How can I get this artist's music heard?
Almost like a mentoring label.
Yeah, sort of. But actually the approach I take is I kind of just share what I've learned with them and say, go and do it yourself kind of thing, rather than doing it for them, if that makes sense. Right, I think it's important to have that agency and control over your own output. This is probably the first time in history where we really have an ability to reach people all over the world with our music. It's incredible. Like if I go through my breakdown on Apple Music or Spotify or Tidal, I'm seeing people listening in Brazil, in Mexico, in Japan, the USA, Canada, like just a whole range of people that I never would have been able to reach.
Absolutely.
When I was trying to put CDs out 15 years ago. I know there's ethical implications about how those companies act, and there's a lot more smarter people than me that have written extensive articles about that. But just in terms of people just hearing your music, there's a great opportunity there. Now, if you want to be rich, that might not happen. But
this is the wrong career.
Yeah, totally. But if you want people to hear what you're doing, then, I say the world's your oyster, quite literally at the moment. If you can tap into your little niche market or whatever.
So just quickly, would you say most of your work now is based on word of mouth?
Yeah, I would think so, yeah. Which
and how
is
long
surprising.
Do you feel like it's taken you to get established?
When did I start? I mean, I've sort of, I listened to your recent podcast, guys, and Ed, you were talking about your journey, having the live sound company and then, moving into what you're doing now. And I think we all sort of go through different phases. I mean, I started off with working with producers, then I ended up stopping, and then I became a teacher for a while, and then I came back into releasing my own music, and then got into mixing and whatever else. So I think the journey itself has probably been about 18 years up to this point, to actually start getting to a place where I'm comfortable doing the things that I enjoy, working with people that I respect and admire. I might be doing something a little bit different in sort of 2, 3, 4 years, because it's a constantly evolving professional landscape for us. It's not easy, but it's fun.
Great stuff. All right. Are there any final bits of advice you'd give to someone who is up and coming, trying to become a professional, whether it be production, mixing or mastering, or even songwriting? What's the one bit of advice you would give them? Don't.
No, I would say the complete opposite. With the way the world's going at the moment, we need more and more creative people.
We do, yeah,
and
100%, yeah.
all the other jobs are going to get taken by AI, possibly. I don't know. I would say it's very easy in this day and age to absorb a lot of information, whether you're watching YouTube or reading stuff online or listening to mix breakdowns, but actually getting out and about and connecting with people, that's when ideas happen. That's when, if you collaborate with someone and you're sitting in a room with them, you learn so much about yourself and you learn so much about the music that you're working with. So whether you're a songwriter or a mix engineer, if you're actually meeting other people and getting that real life feeling, I think that's where the essence of music actually is in that collaboration and in being with other people and experiencing it with them, because that's why we do it. You know, we want to connect with people.
Yep.
And if you want to connect with people, you've got to connect with people, you know? Yeah, I still think there's a real place, more so now than ever, for actually sort of having a community and a sense of belonging with other people through your music.
100%.
Great stuff. On that bombshell, thank you so much for the opportunity to mix your song and for giving us your feedback. That's been pretty eye-opening again. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Sam, thank you so much. As usual, my internet's been cutting out like an absolute bitch. So I'm raging, but I'm really happy that we've been able to piece it all together, because I think that there's so many great things in this conversation, as there always is in our interviews. And I think we touched on so many different things in this episode, and I think there'll be lots and lots of things for those starting out to really get their teeth into, and kind of, I think a few light bulbs might be popping off for people starting out watching this video. So again, thanks so much, Sam, for your time and your expertise. Thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to mix your fantastic record. And again, we'll keep an eye on all your future releases as well, as we do everybody else watching this podcast. So we will leave links to Sam's music down below, and again, links to the PDP guys as well, because obviously always got to look after each other. And yeah, thank you so much for your time. I've been Paul Third, that's Ed Thorne, that's Sam Reck, and we will see you again next week on the Working Audio Tools podcast.